Good afternoon on this beautiful, sunshiny, dry day that we have outside. Someday we will, right? My name is Diane LeVay. I am with the Quilts of Valor Foundation, and all of these ladies here are with the Quilts of Valor Foundation. They're all part of our group at Parnassus United Methodist Church in Parnassus, Virginia. And we thank you for being invited to participate in today's ceremony. This means a lot to us, and hopefully our recipients will be honored. That is our intention. The Quilts of Valor Foundation was founded in 2003 by a Catherine Roberts. Catherine had a son who was deployed to Iraq. He was a gunner sitting atop a Humvee. And Catherine was always about 90 seconds away from panic. One night, she actually had a dream, and she saw a soldier sitting beside his bed being tortured by the demons of war. In the next minute, she saw the soldier sitting there, wrapped up in a quilt, and she found that it brought him great comfort. From that moment on, she realized that quilts brought comfort to everybody. And thus the Quilts of Valor Foundation was started. Originally there was a different name for it, but that's kind of grown through the years. Right now the Quilts of Valor Foundation, that's nationwide, has over 4,000 members. There are over 400 groups that participate in this, creating quilts for our veterans, currently serving military, and for all of our veterans, no matter what war. When Catherine first started this, her first quilt was awarded to an Iraqi war veteran at Walter Reed Hospital. Her intention was that these quilts would go to Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. However, that gradually changed, and the mission of the Quilts of Valor gradually changed as Catherine and others realized that they needed to be more inclusive. She was at a function at one point where they were going to award quilts to Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, only there were none there. But there were a group of Vietnam veterans who were there traveling as an honor guard for the traveling wall. And at that point, she awarded the quilts to the Vietnam veterans. After being told many times by many of these veterans that we've never heard thank you before, and this means a lot to us, she realized at that point that then the quilts needed to go to all active and veterans in the serving, men or women, whatever their branch of service is, wherever they were, whatever they did. Everybody has been touched by war in one way or another. Many of our ladies, sorry, I always forget, I'm not used to a microphone. Many of our ladies have family members who have been in the service. Several of them have dads who were in World War II, husbands who were in the service, sons who were in the service. Our son was in the Army and was deployed to Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan twice. So many of us have an idea of what happens. We just don't really realize what these people go through, what they do for us. We realize that our freedom is not free. Part of the reason for these quilts and the awarding of these quilts is to let our veterans know that because of them, we have our freedom. And it is at this time that we are very honored to be able to award quilts to 3 veterans who are here. And I understand they did not know why they were here or what they were here for, but that's cool, that's good. That's always better. And our first one, and we have a little bit of information about each veteran too, and I'm sure that once this information is read about each veteran, some of you might be surprised about what you hear because you haven't heard it before. We find that that's often the case. We are told many moving things by our veterans when we award the quilts. And some of them are downright heartbreaking, and some of them make us realize why we do what we do, and we will continue to do it. Since 2003, the foundation itself throughout the country has awarded over 187,702 quilts. Our group is up to 256 at this point in time of quilts that we have awarded. We have sent quilts to Iraq, to Germany, to the hospitals, to Afghanistan, to the hospital, to many of the VA centers throughout the United States, Fort Gordon, the one in, Clarksville. Fort Campbell, thank you. That's why I keep these people around. Fort Campbell, and all across the United States, and we have done a lot of local awards. At one point, we awarded a Quilt of Valor to Dr. Marsh in Middlebrook. Some of you might know who he is. His reputation seems to extend far and wide. He was the medic in the Black Hawk Down situation in Somalia. So now at this point in time, our first quilt will go to James Neighbor Smith. I was told I had to be called these nicknames. So James Neighbor Smith is a World War II veteran.
Probably not, I'm loud. I'm gonna stand behind Neighbor here and read this about him. It's a biography for James Smith, Senior, World War II veteran. All right, he proudly served our country and still is serving our community. He was drafted in January 1943 at the age of 20 and attended basic training at Fort Jackson near Columbia, South Carolina. A Neighbor was trained as a tank driver as part of the U.S. Army 42nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, 2nd Dragons Cavalry Regiment, Company F, as in Foxtrot. Operations participated in include England, Normandy, Northern France, Ardennes, Rhineland, Luxembourg, and Czechoslovakia. Special operations include accepting the surrender of the entire 11th Germany Panzer Division and liberation, the world-renowned Luke-Peisner stallion horses, along with 200 U.S. prisoners of war from Czechoslovakia, a short time before the Russians' force arrived. If the Russians had reached the area first, the fate of the prisoners and horses could have been much different. Awards received include a Medal of Good Conduct and the American Middle Eastern Service Ribbon. Mr. Smith was discharged October the 28th, 1945, and was welcomed by his family, some of whom were the McClung Drug Store in Lexington. The location was the bus stop. After returning from the war, Mr. Smith worked for the C&O Railroad in Clifton Forge and resided in Selma, Virginia. He worked 26 years as a truck driver for Smith Transfer until retiring January the 31st, 1986. Mr. Smith continues to reside in Selma with his family of daughters, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. He has been superintendent of Selma Methodist Church Sunday School for nearly 60 years. And I want to thank Mr. Smith's Neighbor for his service.
Quilt of Valor. And the ladies have it here for you. Traditionally, the men stand up and we wrap them up in the quilt, but that doesn't always work. That's fine, that's not a problem. We'll wrap them up in it from behind. That'll work. We try to be flexible. But this Quilt of Valor is for you. On the back of it, there is a label that tells the name of the quilt, the name of the quilter, the lady who did the quilting for us, since we are all volunteers, and then the name and your name on there, and that you were in World War II. And neighbor is on there, of course. I had to put all those in there. But that quilt is for you. It is for you to use. Go ahead and wrap them up in it from behind. That'll work. These quilts are warm too. A lot of the Korean War veterans tell us they wish they had them when they were in Korea, because we understand it's quite cold. What little bit I know of it, it is. From the foundation, from the Quilts of Valor Foundation for James Neighbor Smith, World War II, U.S. Army. The Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it a privilege to honor you. Though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice and service to protect and defend the United States of America, as an expression of gratitude, we award you this quilt of Valor. This certificate is yours. With each quilt comes a presentation case. That's what we had it wrapped up in when we brought it here. That's for you to use. Washing instructions. And part of it is a letter about our group and a little bit about the quilt you're receiving today. And someday I'll let the ladies read the letter I write. I say that every time. The Korean War veteran. Thank you. William Darfel Rice of Covington, Korean War veteran.
William Darfel Rice was born on May the 11th, 1930, just 6 months after the stock market crash of 1929. He grew up in the Rivermont neighborhood in Covington, Virginia, and experienced childhood during the Great Depression. With the paper mill and rayon plant, there was work in Covington, but times were still tough as families lived on the necessities of life. Darfo was 11 years old when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. His adolescent years experienced life in a nation at war. He understood rationing, victory gardens, war bonds, and the total sacrifice America made to win World War II. He joined the National Guard in 1947 to make extra money while he was still in high school. He graduated from Covington High School in June of 1949 and enlisted in the Army in July. World War II had ended in 1945, but the Army was occupying Germany and some other European nations. A conflict had developed on the peninsula of Korea. His unit initially conducted patrols, in September of 1950, he deployed for initial training in Japan before going to Korea. His unit initially conducted patrols in the hostile zones of the peninsula. His background in the National Guard landed him an assignment to the artillery. He rose to the rank of Master Sergeant, and when his one-year tour was about to end, he was extended an additional 4 months because his unit required his experience as a top-ranking NCO. While the duty was tough, his most memorable experience was being called up on the stage with Marilyn Maxwell during a USO show. Darfo returned to the U.S. in February 1952 and married Ruby Brizendine. He worked for a local contractor until he got a job at the West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company in Covington. He retired in 1993 as a shift supervisor in the recovery department. He and his wife raised 3 sons, William Darfo Billy Jr., Jerry, and Steve. Darfo is now a widower, but enjoys the company of his 3 sons and their wives, as well as 5 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. He's been an avid fisherman, hunter, and golfer. Darfo may be known best as Mr. Ump. He umpired hundreds of scholastic baseball games in the western part of the state, and when he called you out, there was no doubt about it. He was perhaps the most respected umpire in the area, and when a team saw him behind the plate, they could be sure of getting a consistently called game. Darfo's been a faithful member of VFW Post 1033 and has held numerous offices. He was a participant on the honor squad of the funeral detail, and while no longer active in that role, he continues to make the calls to line up the details to cover funerals in Allegheny, Bath, Botetourt, Augusta, and Greenbrier counties. Post 1033 conducts military rites at more than 40 funerals a year. Darfo Rice exemplifies the traits and qualities of a faithful soldier and an American hero. He is loyal, trustworthy, and honorable.
At this time, Mr. Ump, we would like to award you with your Quilt of Valor. The ladies have it here. You can stand up. Yes, is that, sir? Each one of our quilts tries to be a little different. We meet once a month, and I set up the kits for the ladies, and they work on these quilts. Again, there's the name on the quilt for you, your name, U.S. Army and Korean War, the name of the quilt, the name of the quilter. And no, sir, that I don't have. If you want, we can put it on there. You can put it on
There's
there.
an RA in front of it.
Oh, okay. All right. Regular. Okay. Go ahead and wrap them up in it. That'd be great. Let me get the. This is the first time we've all been on a stage, so you'll have to get. We'd love to be able to get a picture of each of you after, too, wrapped up in your quilts if possible. Thank you. Yeah, hugs are part of this. There's the official Quilt of Valor hug. When we awarded quilts to 12 people in Deerfield, Virginia at the VFW, most of them were Vietnam veterans. One was an Iraq veteran. But when we awarded quilts to them at the end of that evening, everybody was getting hugs. Those guys just loved it. They made sure we all got hugs from them. Again to you. Man, I don't have 3 minutes. Thank you. Washing instructions. Minor detail, but it's kind of important. These quilts have been washed. They are ready to use, and we expect them to be used. We want them to be used. Yes, sir. There's a letter about our quilt, our group, and about this quilt that you have. And again, for you from the foundation to William Darfo Rice, U.S. Army, R.A. Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it a privilege to honor you, though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice and service to protect and defend the United States of America. As an expression of gratitude, we award you this Quilt of Valor. This is for you.
Thank you very much.
It's a very important part. And a Vietnam veteran, Talmadge Leon Good. And I hope did I say Talmadge correctly? Good, no, thank you. Bill, you need this.
Talmadge Leon Good was born in Covington, Virginia on October the 24th, 1946. He's the son of Kathleen Good and the grandson of Hampton and Hattie Good. He attended Watson High School in Covington. He entered the U.S. Army by draft in 1963 and received his basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. He received advanced training as a recreational specialist at the Presidio Army Base in San Francisco in 1965. He was then stationed in Korea, where he served in the 3rd and 23rd Infantry Bravo 113. He saw action at the DMZ, border of North and South Korea. He then returned stateside in 1967 and was briefly stationed at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, before transferring to Germany in 1986. His next assignment was Vietnam from 1968 to 1970, mustering out in the summer of 1970 as an E5 sergeant with an honorable discharge.
And at this time, Leon, gotta use those nicknames, we would like to award you your Quilt of Valor with many thanks from all of us. And can you come up front with it for a minute, please? So that, yeah, gotta get a picture of the quilt. And again, on the quilt, on the back of the quilt, the label, the name of the quilt, and your name, U.S. Army and Vietnam, today's date, too, that was the other thing I kept forgetting, the name of the quilter, and whoever did the binding on the quilt, which is the stuff around the edges for you. And thank you for your service. Gotta get that in. And is there, you're getting from all the rest of them too at the end. And they expect theirs too from everybody. And again for you, washing instructions in the letter about our group and about the quilt. Well, we try to send a letter with every quilt. It explains a little bit about our group, what we've been doing. In fact, I did forget to say, and it's very important, one of the members of our group is a retired Air Force nurse who served in Vietnam. And she was one of our first recipients of a Quilt of Valor, and rightly so. To Talmadge Leon Good, U.S. Army. The Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it a privilege to honor you. Though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice and service to protect and defend the United States of America, as an expression of gratitude, we award you this Quilt of Valor. This is for you. These quilts are awarded to each of you as a thank you to let you know we know freedom is not free. We wouldn't be able to be here and do this without each of you. We thank you, we honor you, and we hope these quilts bring you comfort should you ever need it from us. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much.